presence. We welcome each person's unique spiritual perspective, strive to learn more about each other, and honor the diversity of our various traditions. That's what we're trying to do here, to have conversation, to have dialogue between people of different faiths, different understandings of the ground of their being. And so we're pleased to have this, and I'm delighted we have so many folks here tonight to participate. Ed Branthaver, who's a member of the steering committee, is going to moderate the meeting, and I'll turn the meeting over to him. Ed?
Pastor Ed, thank you very much. And thanks to the coalition for actually modifying their mission statement. If it had not been for Ed inviting me to be part of this coalition, we probably wouldn't be here for this reason this evening. I'm very, very grateful for that. And I appreciate the opportunity and hope we all go away from here feeling better than when we came in. What are we about tonight? Dialogue with non-theists. What is a non-theist? Well, you know, people have said atheist, skeptic, agnostic, humanist, heathen, rationalist. And those are some of the nicer names. But the group that meets together here in Hagerstown likes to call ourselves, we think, a less confrontational term, free thinkers. The Hagerstown free thinkers. And what is a free thinker? Let me read the definition that's given by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Here is who we non-theist free thinkers are. Free thinker is a person who forms opinions about religion on the basis of reason, independently of tradition, authority, or established belief. Free thinkers include atheists, agnostics, rationalists, etc. No one can be a free thinker who demands conformity to a Bible, a creed, or a Messiah. To the free thinker, revelation and faith are invalid, and orthodoxy is no guarantee of truth. That's Freedom from Foundation's definition of a free thinker. And we free thinkers believe that. We have a good beginning this evening. I want to kind of read from a book which I'd highly recommend to those of you who are interested. It's called Good Without God: What a Billion Non-Religious People Do Believe. It's written by Greg M. Epstein. He happens to be a humanist chaplain at Harvard University with the purpose of finding compassion and community. Here's what he says about his book. Just a few sentences and then we'll get to our panel members. This is not a book about whether one can be good without God, because that question does not need to be answered. It needs to be rejected outright. To suggest that one can't be good without God is not just an opinion. It's a mere curious musing. It's prejudice. It may even be discrimination. After all, would you ever ask Is it possible to be a good person if you're a Muslim? Lou?
Yeah.
Or a Buddhist? I don't know where Tim is not here tonight, is he? Or Jewish? Or Christian, for that matter. Would you feel comfortable working for an employer who implied that all gays and lesbians were immoral? Or all Democrats? Or Republicans? How would you feel if your daughter were planning to marry someone who claimed that all Catholics were lousy, unethical human beings, or all Protestants for that matter? This is the sort of all or nothing condemnation of a huge population one is making if one suggests that goodness and morality require belief in a deity. Something to ponder. Let me introduce our members this evening. On your left, on my right, is Eldon Winston, secular humanist from the Fresh group in Frederick. His information is on your program, as is the rest of the panel members. To Eldon's left is ZSun-nee Matema, who will talk about agnosticism. You can also read about her many accomplishments. And the president of the Pennsylvania Non-Believers, Brian Fields, we're glad to have him here to talk about atheism this evening. What we're going to do is have each one of them deliver their presentation without questions between the presentations. Then after the presentation, we'll open the floor to questions and or comments. Let me read to you, however, for your edification, if I can find it among my notes here, the questions that were distributed to them by the coalition, hoping that this would give them something to start with. Now, not every one of them was happy to get these questions, but that's perfectly okay. They'll respond in their own way, in their own individual way. And by the way, you need to remember that each one of these individuals are speaking totally and completely for themselves. They don't represent the entire category of people that they're discussing. Just like Christians and other folks, there's all different cuts of the different categories. The questions. Explain and or define your belief in the existence of God. Where and with whom do you share your beliefs? When and what grew you to become a non-theist? Describe your journey. Briefly discuss your stance on separation of church and state, and why is it important? What text or influences are the basis for your belief? And read a short piece. What are your feelings toward theists? And by the way, on the table in the back are a number of books, happens to be from my personal library, for your perusal, not for loan and not for sale. But there are some things on the second table here that you're welcome to look at and take along with you. I think there's a couple magazines and then some the Free Thought newsletter from FFRF. Another question. What does your belief system say about goodness, ethics / morality without God? Are you happier now than before? Have your morals changed? Do you ever have doubts? Do you feel guilty about your decision? How do you relate to family members, friends, and other theists? Is the Bible reliable? What is your view of America if your views were the majority? And finally, any thoughts about the afterlife? And I'm told there's another question that's in the audience that we haven't have printed here, but I'm sure there's other ones as well. So without further ado, Mr. Winston, you're on. Let's make sure the mic is on.
It's on.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Now that I've scared you, perhaps I may bridge the gap between theistic and non-theistic views, but I have found the different assumptions difficult to relate to in the past. First is the misunderstanding of the place of authority in life and the value placed on guidance in what to think. Secular humanism has no Bible. I know of no widely accepted book or magazine that is more than suggestive of things accepted as general goods or descriptions of secular humanism. I know there are those who find the counsel for secular humanism a unifying voice and focus of discussion, but there is no creed to which one must adhere, even though one might be ignored if their views were simply renamed variations of some unrelated belief. We've had some of those, so I bring that up. From my discussions, secular humanists arrive at our mutual and similar beliefs by observation of the theistic chaos and our own thoughts on what might be real. My conclusion, and I feel this is widely shared, is that a secular humanist believes they are in this world, of this world, and for this world. There is no one foot in some other life or world. What we make of this world and life is what it is all about. Locally, secular humanists can meet in any of the chapters of the Washington Area Secular Humanist Organization, such as Frederick Secular Humanists, called FRESH, that generally meets at 1:30 p.m. the second Sunday of the month at the C. Burr Arts Library on East Patrick Street in Frederick, in a small meeting room beyond the front desk. This month they met on the first Sunday. And in May, in deference to Mother's Day weekend, we'll meet on the first Sunday again, in case you'd like to come over. You're welcome. I find people in such a place as FRESH discussing topics using terms which I find believable and using common definitions. I'll get my pencil undone. Okay, for me, becoming a secular humanist was more in finding the right name rather than finding the right belief. I have attended many churches for various functions and read many things, but while atheists didn't quite feel right when the word secular was put in front of the word humanist, I could finally feel I had found a group of people of common belief, intent, and direction with which to fellowship. No need to talk about imaginary beings nor angels dancing on heads of pins. But what of the fantasy of an afterlife that consoles the bereaved? I find this unbelievable. Dead is dead. And as the body lies there, it putrefies, if not preserved, or pollutes the world if it is. Dust unto dust seems a valid and sufficient statement. Theists are the majority in America, even as America benefits from low church attendance in many places. My basic view of theists depends on their proclaimed view of themselves. If they loudly beat their breasts, trumpet their high morals, and note how forgiven they are for their sins, I assume from many past incidents that such people are not to be trusted, and I hold on to my wallet and leave the vicinity if possible. From history, I recognize that the only thing keeping theists from establishing a theocratic tyranny in any country similar to that in Iran is diversity. To paraphrase theistic terms, thank the gods for so many denominations. Who should lead our nation? I don't believe any specific belief or group, theistic or non-theistic, shows consistent ethical superiority. I do not believe that any group of people is significantly more moral, less greedy, nor better trusted to lead our country, except that they have thought through their own values and lived them, while maintaining humility enough to allow others to differ in their own views. Whether we are led by an honest theist or non-theist, America is in great trouble since there is a lack of civility and ignorance is valued above knowledge. The world is thousands of years beyond the time when humans should have grown up, cooperated in discovery, and agreed on actions to better not just ourselves, but our planet. But that too is wishful thinking. Thank you.
My name is Matema, and I'll tell you something. This is my debut in terms of speaking to people about my beliefs. Often I have kept them to myself because it doesn't make you a good friend. You don't get along to go along when you begin to talk about these things. But for years, I have been contemplating, reflecting, perhaps becoming a scientist, so to speak, in which I have been experimenting. I love to do that. I experiment with myself as well as with other kinds of conditions, environments. I like to see what's going to happen so that I can say with assurance that, oh, okay, I've tried that. I know what that's going to do, and now I'm ready to make a change. So I thought I'd let you know that I started out in Catholic school. These things are important. That in and of itself may have been enough to have made me reconsider Christianity. However, I did start out in Catholic school. I was raised by parents who were Episcopalian. So that was sort of a softer take on Christianity. As a child and even now, I had certain gifts which gave me a little insight into what was going on in the world, at least if we're speaking of spirituality or religion. I am clairvoyant and clairaudient. So as an agnostic, that gives me sometimes special problems. But not really, not really. When I entered college, things changed for me, because then I began to hear fully explained history, the living art of history. Now, that did something for me, because I began to see that all of the cherished beliefs of my grandmother and my mother could be fully explained by rituals and practices that came from distant lands far, far away in Egypt and Sumer. Now I'm asking myself, why then am I to believe this certain set of principles, of codes of religious and institutional belief. Why am I to be a part of that if, in fact, these things were already on the planet thousands and thousands of years ago? Now they're going to have a little problem with me when they begin to teach me what Jesus said, because I now know that it was said by some Egyptian a long time ago. So this was, I could not understand this when I began to speak to my friends, theist friends, who were very much under the spell of some of the more forthright, more notable characters, and Jesus being one of them. They wanted to hear nothing of this. Oh, that couldn't be true. Okay, so at that point, I began to go underground with my knowledge. I continued to research. I continued to experiment to see what was true, what would hold up and what wouldn't. And then I am a descendant. I'm a descendant of enslaved people at Mount Vernon. My grandmother to the 7th generation was Caroline Branham. She was part Native American, part African, and part European. And she was also the personal maid to Martha Washington. Now, I couldn't help but ask the question, if Christianity is all that they say it is, someone tell me, how in the world were those slave owners able to sleep with both the mind of a Christian and the cruel heart of someone who sustained and supported slavery? How did it happen? All of these things began to give me a feeling that there is something I need to look into, something I need to ward off, something I need to protect myself from. And so I began to look into other religions. They could all go just so far, and then I would find hypocrisy within the group, and I'd say, no, this can't be, because if people are truly taking this as seriously as they are attempting to sell it to me, then something's wrong. If they don't believe it, why should I? And they don't even have the history, and they don't even want to give the history. So I thought about General Washington. You know, he was a theist. He did believe in God, but he certainly wasn't a, big stakeholder in Jesus. And many of them were not. Maybe Lincoln, but that's about it. So I had to think about where they were coming from too, and I had to start thinking about the way in which some of these organizations brought in some of the secret society information, and that became part of their, religious tone and practices. I know that now because I also studied with the Mormons. I don't know if there are any Mormons out there. Okay, agnostic. Okay, this is a term that was coined by Thomas Henry Huxley in 1869 to describe one who sees no proof in matters of God, heaven, hell, sin, or redemption by religion. In other words, non-committal to a belief in God. Now, I can tell you that I have wrestled with this. This did not come easy to me because every time I attempt to share this, I see my grandmother's face. Okay. So I cannot, it doesn't come easily to throw away these old beliefs, but I know I have to stand on my own authority, and that takes me to the next thing. What authority do I accept? None. If you're talking about a God's authority, I don't accept any. Now, that may pain some of you, but I don't have to ask permission. I can recall at one point I was thinking to myself, I just don't think God exists. I would like to have some proof and evidence, but I don't believe it. So I decided, I said, so here's what's going to happen. God, if you're up there, here's what's going to happen, or out there, in there, wherever. I think I'm just going to do without believing in you for a few days. Let's see what happens. Right now, it's over, okay, between us. Well, on the third day, as they say, I had a dream. This is the truth. I keep dream journals, I can tell you. And I saw this huge head roll said to myself, after I had awakened, I said, that's what I thought. So mythology becomes, to me, the synonym for religion, because to me that's what it is. And, oh yes, because of my cultural orientation, you may hear me say, oh my Lord, oh God, because yes, I was certainly raised in a community and a culture where that was said easily and readily. But it doesn't mean the same thing anymore. As it regards the Bible, do I think it's divinely inspired? Of course not. Men wrote it. And where did they get it from? Well, the ancient Egyptians, for one, and the Sumerians. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Well, how about this? The Sumerians already gave us a complete story. Highly believable, in fact, too believable. Because when you start listening to people telling you that scientists had something to do with the beginnings of mankind, you know, that's just not fanciful enough to me to make a good fable or a mythology. Tell me that someone floated on water. Tell me that they changed water into wine. Now you've got me. But don't tell me that scientists had something to do with it. So I kind of incorporated that into what I think was probably the forerunner of how we got into all of this with the Bible. Half stories, half histories. It's fun though. It's great. It's great storytelling. But I see no truth in that. Now, what do I make of Jesus? Being clairvoyant and clairaudient, even as a child, I was trying hard, desperately hard to buy into God. But I never could buy into Jesus. And I didn't understand why. I was a child under the pressure of Catholic school. My goodness, if they couldn't bend to me, who could they bend? So I began to see Jesus as just a brother, an example of something. I also thought to myself, and this is hard to say, but let me take another sip of water. Thank you. I also began to think of Jesus as a failed personality. Why? Because, as the story goes, he had an ego problem. Now, that in and of itself said something to me. Why? How can you say that? Rather easily. Because he always asked, why? Why is this happening to me? Why have you forgotten me? Why? So I said to myself, gee, that's the same kind of the questions I ask. I mean, I want someone who's going to be part of the Godhead to, know these answers. I don't want them to ask me or ask anybody else. I want them to know. Okay, but he did not. Acceptable, ethical conduct, oh, you don't need a God for that. You really don't. My heart was so heavy when I drove here today from Baltimore. I've been living in Baltimore for 8 years. My heart was so heavy. Ed doesn't know this, but he was just so close to my calling and saying, Ed, I don't know if I can do this. Not for me, but for you. I don't want to hurt anybody. That's why I've gone so underground with this. But I've always thought this was the thing to do. And see, I'm doing it. So I just think that ethical behavior depends on your knowing what is decent and what is not decent. So how do I determine what's good and bad and evil and all of that? Well, I've always thought of sin as an attraction to failure, an attraction towards failure. And if I'm going to be good, I want to do something that elevates, something that does no harm. If I'm going to do something, if I think it's bad or someone else is doing something bad, it would be that which destroys, that which does do harm. And that's about it. Can an agnostic be a Christian is one of the questions. Well, I guess, perhaps listen, anything's possible. If you knew, my life and all of the things that have happened to me in a spiritual sense, quote unquote, especially with the clairvoyance and clairaudience, you would say, my goodness, did you see angels? Did you see this? Here's what I know. Whatever I saw, to this day, I cannot tell you what it was with any certainty. I just know that things happen, things materialize, things communicated. What about the soul? Well, it would take us a year to discuss this in a metaphysical way, because I have studied metaphysics since I was 11 years old. And I can tell you that there's a lot to that. Personally, I see us as a collection of cells. But then I think that we're cells living within the cells of something. Are we living within the cells of an organ, such as a heart? Is that heart not cells within a larger body? What do we have here? That's really where I am with this. And I recognize that whenever man has cried out, religion has stepped in to fill in the gap. So that's how I look at a good purpose. That perhaps was a good purpose. When man didn't know what we were hearing when the storm crashed, okay, that's great. What is it? That is the voice of God. God is not pleased with us. Oh, okay. See, but now we know what it is. It's a thunderstorm. Okay. But when you didn't know, it kind of helped things along. So we don't need that anymore. It's like you're growing up and you're realizing, oh, when I was little, my mother would, rock me and tell me everything was going to be okay, and it was. Well, I wish my mother would rock me sometimes, even now, but of course it's all done, How do I feel about the hereafter? Again, I don't think that energy ever dies away. I'm sure there's a more scientific term for that, but I believe that energy constantly changes. So whatever we are, some of us, something will go on. Maybe we'll be steam. Well, a lot of people have said this is hot air anyhow, so maybe that, can't get rid of it. Now, there's much more to that, but I'll go. God's judgment. Do I not afraid that God could judge me because I've denied him? Well, I gave him 3 nights to make up his mind, and not, nothing happened there. So I figured right there, oh, okay, so we're square now. I've got the whole story, and it's okay. Because how many times have we all prayed for an answer? If the answer didn't come, we said we didn't do something right. If we said the answer, if it didn't come, we didn't do something right. If it did come, we said all praises to God's glory. Right? So there's always a reason. Something happened to me that really hit home. Not too long ago, a coworker said to me, well, my grandson was diagnosed with cancer, and he's 18, and it has metastasized throughout his entire body. He's been sick a long time, and we didn't know it. And she said to me, the reason that he has that is because you don't believe in Jesus. And I said, well, needless to say, I was hurt. This is a Christian. She tries to get me to go to church with her every Sunday. Do you think I'm going? Well, here's what's happened. In the past 2 months, she's developed breast cancer. She's been out for quite a while. Do I think that that was, quote unquote, karma? I don't know what it was. I do know this. And I said this to her, and this is what I'm saying to all of you. Nothing in the world would ever make me say to a Christian, well, that's why you have that problem, because you don't believe it. I would never, and I'm not a Christian, but I would never hurt anyone that way. So, that's where I am with judgment and that kind of thing. The beauty and harmony of nature, well, I believe that animals have the same characteristics and personal traits as we have. I really do. I must tell you that no one in the world gets more glee out, when I see a little puppy or something like this, so cute and everything, and so are the bears, but I'll bet I shouldn't get too close, So, that kind of lets me know that I found that they're also jealous. I didn't know animals become so jealous. Indeed they can. Now, I'm thinking to myself, see, this is kind of interesting to me. So God is a jealous God. We are jealous people. The animals are jealous. Something is being passed down, if that's really what we're looking at, that that isn't very stable and sincere and good. Just that one little aspect. So that kind of, brings up the meaning of life. We'll talk about that later. Are all forms of religion, superstition, and dogma? Yes. Okay. Which of them do I respect? None. And I don't say that as, I know it sounds, oh, she's very flippant when she said that, wasn't she? But it's not so much that I say it that way, it's just that I am so interested in people breaking free. Breaking free. And I don't think people get that. They don't get it. They're too afraid. Afraid of what? I have never understood it. Because the fear comes when you imprison yourself, when you bargain with in a deal that you can't close because you don't have the answers. But you're in there fighting anyway. So what's happened to you? So that's my thought on that. This is near the end, I'm sure. Science and religion reconcilable? Okay, maybe so. I mean, I think that you can do anything. I think that you can reconcile any doggone thing you want if you look at it from the facts. You know, just the facts, man. Oh, you all, because some of you don't remember Jackie Webb. Remember Jackie who dragged me out of just with that? Okay. I was a little child. I just remember. Okay, all right. It says, what would convince me that God exists? Well, I like to see, in a world where you use your imagination, I would like to see Christians. Not that they would convince me that God existed, but at least they would at least impress me or convince me that they believe it, which would be really nice. If they were to act more in non-racist ways, in as if they understood God's laws, as if they never were willingly hurting a child, you know, as if they were not judging. And we all judge, but I mean judging in a way that belittles someone else. And I just think that there's so many ways that we could see God in action. By the way, where do I think God is? Here it is. There it is. Because if, as you say, God is in everything, well then, I think we all do a pretty good job. Now, how do we use that power? It's like electricity. You can turn it on to light a room, illuminate and educate, or you can flip a light and kill with a nuclear explosion. So how do you use whatever? Yeah, I'm non-committed. I don't see that there is no necessity for God as you may think of it as a Christian. But thank you.
My presentation's generally based around the questions that were asked in more of the QA form, but I think I'm going to try to adjust a little bit. I wasn't sure what the format was going to be when we got here, so mine are a little more structured out. But the first question was explain and/or define your disbelief, and I don't believe that the universe is being guided or controlled by any intelligent force that's been conceived by man at all. I think the very nature of the universe precludes the existence of any kind of God. And I think that every single phenomena observable in the universe is explained by naturalistic rules. I grew up in a literalist Christian tradition. I started to lose my faith in the Bible as an infallible book when I noticed some contradictions in the Bible itself. But it took a lot more study for me to reach where I am today. I can say that every story I've heard I talk with a lot of non-theists, free thinkers, and every story is different. You know, everybody comes from their own unique background. There's at least in this country, there isn't any kind of institutionalized atheist schools or anything like that. So we all kind of arrive where we arrive based on our own experience. For mine, I went through Christianity to paganism, to just exploring any kind of idea of a God that I could latch onto, to letting go into kind of an agnosticism, and finally to atheism. I agree with the founders of this country that a strong separation of church and state is vital to treating people equally under the law. Thousands of years of history have been instructive in what happens when one particular group's beliefs about God are allowed to hold sway over another's. The separation of church and state not only protects the non-religious, but those of any minority religion, which in America includes Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Baha'i, Unitarians, Wiccans, etc. In addition, it protects our primary religion of Christianity from being dominated by one faction, be it Catholicism or Protestantism or any other denomination. I want to point out, when this was first proposed to me, I pointed out to Ed that if you were to have a panel with a secular humanist, an atheist, and an agnostic, you could have it with one person. These three positions actually answer three very different questions, and I'm not sure how many of you know that, but I think it might be appropriate or instructive for me to kind of run through it a little bit. An atheist is someone who doesn't believe in God, or gods, or any kind of supernatural ruler of the universe. An agnostic is someone who believes that the evidence does not exist to come to a decision as to whether God exists or not. Now, the reason why these aren't mutually exclusive is because you can live your life without a belief in God and not have come to a conclusion about whether God exists or not. And secular humanism is about a moral structure. It's about a philosophical structure which is centered around a humanistic, non-believing morality, which you could be an atheist and or an agnostic or any other non-God-centered point of view to hold those. So you can actually have the same person. Now, for myself, I would call myself an atheist and a secular humanist. I would not call myself an agnostic. As I said at the beginning of my presentation, that I do actively believe that there is no God. I do believe that the evidence exists for me to make that claim with confidence. So for me, I don't claim to be agnostic about it. One of the questions regarded what texts or influences are the basis for your belief. We atheists don't have a particular text we put on a pedestal, such as some religions have with books like the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, the Book of Mormon, etc. For me, I prefer to apply critical thinking skills and to evaluate what I read in here, wherever it may come from, rather than consider any specific text to be authoritative, unquestionable, and all-illuminating. One of the questions was, what does your belief system say about goodness? And this was a 5-part question. And one of the parts was, are you happier now than before? As I mentioned in my journey, it's hard for me to point out a before. I mean, I was a Christian, I was a pagan, I was an agnostic, and now I'm an atheist. So I'm not sure, how one would draw the line and say, well, where was I happy and where was I not happy? But I give value to truth. And now I feel that I know more about the universe around me than when I was a Christian or a pagan. And for me, that makes me happy. So, have my morals changed? I don't believe that a belief structure determines your morals. I think your morals and your knowledge and experience determine your belief structure. Even people who are Christian tend not to adhere to every piece of dogma taught by the church, and especially the dogma taught by the church in the past that's not part of modern Christianity. So I think that it's intrinsic to us as human beings to be able to recognize what is moral and what is not moral, for the most part. And for me, that means that it doesn't matter what dogma you follow. You're still going to believe what you think is right. And do I ever doubt my doubts? I always doubt what I know. I constantly research, learn, question, and as I mentioned, I give value to truth, so I want to make sure that I understand truth. I do not doubt that I have a better view of reality than I had as a Christian or a pagan, but I don't presume to know everything, and I expect to continue to learn and grow in my understanding of reality as I grow older. The one question I kind of rankled a bit, and I think I mentioned this to Ed, was do I feel guilty about my decision? This one I think the reason it rankled me is it goes back to the discrimination aspect. Can you be good without God? I don't think there's any reason for anybody to feel guilty. The question implies that there's a common misconception that non-theists simply choose to reject theism. As for myself and many others, that simply is not the case. I have not decided to reject Christianity or paganism, or any other religion for that matter. I simply honestly evaluated the evidence before me and arrived at different conclusions than those faiths. I don't choose to disbelieve religion any more than I choose to disbelieve the notion that I can fly by flapping my arms. That's not a decision. And back to the question about, is the Bible reliable? As what? As a work of fiction? A book of legends? Sure. It's completely reliable. As reliable as the Iliad or the Odyssey. But as a literal history or the Word of God, absolutely not. Any thoughts on the afterlife? No. My life here and now is far more important to me. Given that we have no evidence of life after death, it doesn't make sense to waste any time on it. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, panel. Each one of you, very good job. Well received. I see somebody who's anxious to have a question here. Lil?
I'd like to come there.
Okay.
My question is not religion, to do anything with religion, with science.
Speak in the mic, Lil.
Speak in the mic, okay. In 1940, an eminent scientist with the name of Eldon, I don't know whether you know anybody, but he's one of the founder of the quantum mechanics. He was giving a lecture in Ireland, and the audience was basically made up of professors and very educated people. At the end of his presentation, he said, "Please define life for me." That was 72 years ago, and believe it or not, we do not have a definition what life is. And also, we don't have any definition for death. You know what the death certificate says? He stopped breathing. This is nothing to do with life. Many scientists, after a lot of struggle, and myself came to the conclusion that life is some sort of an energy, what we call is life energy, like the chemical energy, nuclear energy, and so forth. My question to you is that if we die because as a result of energy leaving the body, what happens to the energy?
Who wants to take that? Okay.
Well, I think that this is one of the things I said before. I think that energy does not die off, it just changes. That's why I say I do believe that in my way of thinking, there is something. I'm not speaking to people becoming angels, because actually I don't think we know what an angel is. I just don't think, even if you think you've seen one, I don't think you know what you're really thinking about, talking about. I just don't think you do. Who knows what it is? So many things have happened. But that's what I think about it. I do believe that, as you said, you heat a pan of water, it boils, it's changed already, and then what, this steam, it goes on and on and on. I just don't think that, I think you're right. I think you're right about energy. That's why I say I don't think we need to bring, you know, God into the mix. I know some people might say, well, isn't that God? I don't know. The last time I, you know, cooked something on the stove, I wasn't saying that, but then, you know, if everything's a part of everything, then why don't we just say that we are some type of a phenomena which you say has yet to be explained? Oh, there's so much more to say. We could talk about that for hours.
If I may, I think actually we know a lot more now than we knew in the 40s about energy. There are 4 basic types of energy: electromagnetism, gravity, weak nuclear, and strong nuclear. And these are all measurable forces.
These are the forces, not energy.
Energy,
There's a
yes.
big difference between energy and forces.
Yes, kinetic, potential, etc. I understand what you're saying. But the energy that runs our bodies is a measurable thing. It's been, when you go get an EKG, it's measuring the electrical energy that is in the neurons in your brain. When that electrical energy stops, we stop working. If we get revived and energy is reapplied to the system, we start working again if our body hasn't decayed to the point in which it can no longer process that energy. But it's like, you know, turning off a switch. If you have on a radio or something like that, you have power to the system operates, you remove power to the system stops operating, and we can call that done.
You know, another question is, you're not 100% sure what energy, you know, you said it is changing. But when it is changing, in order to change, something must happen. The other question is, where does this energy come from previously?
Well,
where is this energy come from?
we
No, we have
well,
to answer.
I understand that.
Hear you.
Hear the question.
Yeah,
Repeat the question.
you're asking about, you know, actually, can you come up here and repeat the question? Or go ahead.
I'm not sure we're going to be able to define life, Lou.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
But I would like.
Do you want to respond, Eldon? You don't have to.
I would like to make just a little tiny point here, which doesn't answer the question. But I believe it was Charles Ford, the one who tried to explain frogs coming out of the sky and all these other things. And I believe that was where I read somebody made a big effort of getting extremely sensitive scales under a dying person. And at the point of death, there was a slight decrease in that weight.
That was debunked, actually.
Well, I don't know. I haven't read the debunking part. I found it very interesting. I have no answer. And I have no idea if that was life. And if it's been debunked, as many things have been, why, that even throws more of a quandary in it. I don't have any problem, though, personally, saying at death, that's it. I understand that if you want to, you go beyond somehow.
It's life as we have known it.
As we have known.
I
I
just
saw
want
a
to add.
question back there in the back.
Okay, we'll move on.
Before you, David, I think. Maybe not. Maybe it was you, David. Go ahead.
I've wrestled with how I interface with non-theists. Having grown up Christian and been very traditionally conservative, then becoming very liberal and much more scientific, and being corrected by a bishop of the Lutheran Church that there is no Bible, intact Bible existing. You know, we have overlapping fragments, but there's no, you know, thing. So, and for me, you know, the Bible was inspired by God, if there is a God, but it wasn't written by God. It wasn't dictated by God. So I have no problem with apparent contradictions. Some things I think aren't contradictions, but here's this. I've been very offended by atheists, particularly one of the heroes. Oh, who was it, Ed? We were talking about when he died.
Christopher Hitchens.
Christopher Hitchens, yeah. Because I thought he was what he said about Mother Teresa. Yeah, there were some things that weren't so very good about Mother Teresa, but there were lots of things that were good about Mother Teresa. So anyway, my point is, and I do have one, is that I was offended by people thinking that I was deluded or stupid or whatever for believing in a deity. However, I would think, I came to, and I got to know Ed here last year when I started coming to things. I didn't know Ed was a free thinker, okay? I thought he was a pretty cool guy, and I just wasn't sure what his religious affiliation was. I didn't really, he didn't really say anything to make me think, you know, where he fit on the spectrum. He was off the faith spectrum. So, and then it came up. I read the thing about, you know, should, you know, the whole controversy about should atheists be included in, you know, in the interfaith dialogue, and even the fact that this group, you know, that this had gone back and forth with, you know, with this group. Well, I would imagine that you feel offended by people thinking that you're, you know, pronouncing you're going to hell, or you can't be moral, or whatever. So therefore, if Christians can think that atheists are, then atheists can think that about, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it doesn't hurt me that you think I'm deluded, if you do, or misguided, or whatever. That doesn't hurt me.
So can we coexist?
I think we can, because, you know, the thing was, Ed invited me to come to Free Thinker meeting. I can't do it. I know. And then you know, I was going, oh. I came, and we were introducing ourselves, and I was like, oh, they're thinking, it was a wonderful learning opportunity for me, because as a Lutheran, I got to see, okay, these are why people don't believe, and we have to be able to answer these things, or say, I don't have an answer for that. But we can't just say, oh, well, they just don't you know, whatever. And so that was one thing, was, you know, was getting that. But I said to the group, we have common ground. I said, I don't want there to be a theistic, I'm sorry. A fundamentalist theocracy in the United States, because they're not talking about a Christian theocracy. They're talking about a fundamentalist Christian theocracy in the United States. Not a Christian, but you know, it's a very narrow thing, and I don't want that. And I don't think that in God we trust should be on the money, and I don't think under God should be in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so we have a lot, and I believe in science. I believe in evolution. I believe in astronomy. I believe, you know, so that's you know, so that's my thing. Now I've been all over the place, but I hope you get what I'm talking about. So
I appreciate what you were saying. I just wanted to respond to two things there. The first, there are some atheists that view religious belief as a delusion. I don't think that it's right for someone to say that means people who believe are stupid. There are, you know, obviously assholes exist, but on both sides, you know, people standing on the corner saying you're going to hell. I agree with you there, you know, but even still, I think that morality. I think, you know, if you can agree that morality does not require God.
Yes, because there is natural law.
Then there's a point where theists and non-theists can work together.
Right.
Thank you, Brian. I saw your hand, Russell.
Turn the other cheek. That is a part of Christianity. I've been told that it is not a part of Judaism, nor is it a part of Muslimism. I don't know if that word's right. Islam. It is not a part of Islam. I'm interested in finding out if the information I received was correct, and also what are your group's positions on turn the other cheek, and what is your personal position?
Okay.
First the Islam and the Judaism question, if possible.
All right.
Turn the other cheek is in the New Testament.
Yes, I know it's part of that, but what about, is it, I was told that it is not part of Judaism.
It isn't.
And it is not part of Islam.
Correct.
Okay. Interesting. And I would be interested in hearing your...
Tonight we're 9 and
Yeah.
I think that actually turn the other cheek and eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth are both misguided moral systems. Only because eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, you know, the common joke, well then everybody is blind and toothless. But also, from the aspect of turn the other cheek, there are times when it's important to stand up for yourself and to adhere blindly to a dogma that says turn the other cheek when something wrong is happening or when you need to stand up or stand up for something, I think is wrong. I mean, that's a completely pacifist philosophy, and I don't think that that works either, and it just results in needless death and destruction.
My take on that is simply that this whole business of turning of the cheek and someone can, you know, pow you on the other side too is certainly a far cry from what I have understood it to be since a child. And what I get out of this is when you are looking towards something you do not want, again, that attraction to defeat, you simply look away towards what you do want, and that's the turning of the other cheek. And I just think that, you know, that's why I say there are so many ways to embody a principle of self-ownership and adulthood simply by revisiting some of these biblical phrases, which, by the way, some of them are very nice, you know, to put up in your kitchens and things like that and make you think about life. But the real work that must be done is a lot deeper than just the words themselves.
Okay. Let me ask.
Can I answer something to Williams?
Yes, yes.
You know, you said about Islam. Islam says forgiveness is superior to punishment.
Which is a variation of turn the other cheek.
Well, you take it the way you like it, but this is what Islam says about that.
I'm just collecting information.
Is there a Jew in the audience? Okay, can you answer the question?
Yeah, I would like to address it. My PhD is in philosophy of religion, which doesn't say I'm intelligent or very well educated. It just says I have a lot of background. I would like to ask people to consider one thing. Now, we have a very strong tendency to oversimplify the other person's belief system and other religions. In any belief system, ethics and morality are complex issues. They do not reduce to one simple statement. Again and again and again, you see that. One of my problems with Christopher Hitchens, and I'm an atheist, incidentally, and a clear, not an agnostic, an atheist, is that he was utterly disrespectful of the mind of people who are theists. And he did not study theism. He was ignorant of it. He showed his ignorance of it in what he wrote. It was appalling. And I wanted to say to him again and again, come, Christopher, let's talk. I want you to understand what it is. You're oversimplifying. Thank you, Karen. Thank you.
David, another Jewish person. Got to be brief, David.
I come to the front, so you guys wouldn't have to crane your necks or anything. It's a natural spot to be talk. Okay.
You're answering what question?
I am proclaiming that I know the answer.
To turn the other
I
cheek?
was early.
Is that
No, I just came out of the bathroom. I want to tell you, we're all human. We're all sitting under similar circumstances. We're all searching, if we're really searching, for a deep answer that would put all the quibbles and the problems of he insulted me when he said this, and she insulted me when she said that. All this stuff goes by the boards. And when it all goes by the boards, people it becomes entertainment. You become happy, free from pressure, anxiety. And why? Because you recognize, even as for the first time, that you're here. That the world, however it come to be, and however it will be, in the deep eons of future time, is of a piece. And you are there. Walter Cronkite, you're here. Okay, so what is this dilemma of all these things? And I'll tell you, deeper than all the service that all this stuff has done, because everything we've been describing has virtue. Everything we've talked about has purpose, has served well to maintain people through good times and bad, stressful times and pleasant. What's the rub? The rub is that we think in categories. I early on got introduced to Zen. And I was raised a student of the Hebrew Academy of Washington. They did a good job of educating me as far as it went. But Zen seemed to have an answer, because it had no answers, but it proposed the approach. Here's a question for you. Does a dog have Buddha nature?
Mine does.
Good. you know the classic answer to that one is what? Spelled usually W-U. And what means no. So according to a translation of what, dog does not have Buddha nature. But according to the dog's expression of what, he's got Buddha nature. So where is the answer? The answer does not exist. The answer does exist. The answer does not exist in conventional form. The answer, whatever this ethereal answer is beyond the category of a question. But the question propounds the thought. But anyway, here we are. And the fact that we are is the trump. We're no different than people that lived 100,000 years before us. We're no different than the people that went into Auschwitz, that went into Gettysburg. We're no different from people who are currently down at Coney Island on the roller coaster. Yeah, I mean, you know, whatever. The answer to the thing is to be present. It goes deeper than all this about God or not. Now, my own experience. I've had a lot of yes, I know you.
Rabbi?
I've elapsed my time. But anyway, maybe I have. And so it is. Okay. Yeah, come to the end of my rope. Thank you.
Somebody. Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I just have a question for the three of you. Just a clarification. When you say God, what is that? What are you talking about? I'd just be curious to know.
Do you want to start?
Why not? As I think ZSun-nee mentioned, I still use the word, oh good Lord, but it doesn't have a religious meaning. In fact, the meaning I frequently use it in is way different than religious. It sometimes includes hitting my thumb with the hammer. I use other words too.
Can you have God without religion? That's sort of a correlate to that question.
Well, I can't find it in my mind that there be anything beyond chaos in the universe at any level. So I can't find a God. I think you can have religion with or without a God, as I believe, and again on how you look at Buddhism and some of the others, they might be willing to say no God, but there's a Buddha. Again, I'm not current on all Buddhist thinking by any means. I just find the idea unbelievable, as I do for afterlife, but comforting, if you wish to believe.
What's the idea that you can't believe? That's what I'm not understanding.
Okay, well,
there's
my
infinite number
understanding,
of definitions for God. So I'm
okay,
just
my understanding of the definition, as I have heard it in many churches,
okay.
all-knowing, all-seeing, and there's another all.
All present.
All present, yes,
All powerful.
yes.
All powerful.
Yes, omnipresent,
Are you going to go with
omnipotent.
all good as well? On the
I've
benevolent?
read too much of the Bible to go for that one. Okay, I find that impossible to believe. No. Now that we know that there's not just billions of stars in our own galaxy, but there's billions of galaxies. If we were created in God's image, you might say God helped the universe.
I'd like to answer as a secular humanist agnostic.
Okay.
Use the microphone.
I'd like to respond to your question as a secular humanist agnostic. I have become comfortable, and it took a long while to do this, I have become comfortable with answering, I don't know.
And neither do you.
I don't know.
Neither does anyone else.
Right.
You can add that if you wish. I'm speaking for
Want to
myself.
answer next? I'll take it last.
Okay.
If you're are you still asking
Yes,
about that
well,
one question?
She asked all three of us.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, okay.
If you're asking me what is my concept of God,
Thank you, Brian.
well, it began when I first asked a Catholic priest, why is it that every time God appears in the Bible, he comes in a cloud? And I realized he had no more idea than I did. But what he said to me was, well, it's a mystery. We're not supposed to understand God's mysteries. And I just felt sorry for him and sorry for myself that I had to ask him because I knew he didn't know. I think, what is God? What do I think when people say God? I think that it's in lieu of saying, somebody, help. And God is a nice framed, vocalization. We've all learned it from the time we were in mother's arms, most of us, so we say it readily. But I just think that when you stop and think about it, in my case anyhow, not only am I not committed to that, but I really feel myself now saying, it doesn't answer the question. And the next thing that it makes me think about is we just finished with the whole Easter season. My thing on that is, if Jesus came to bring any kind of an answer, what happened to him? I don't understand the story. I just don't get the Jesus story. He was supposed to know. I mean, I can't explain it any more than that. That wraps it up for me. So that lets me know that it's just a legend and a fable. And besides, you have Mithra, Buddha, Osiris. Oh my gosh, I can't even think of all the ones so many that have the exact MO, modus operandi. They all had the Virgin Mother. They all, eventually grew up. They all had the, 12 disciples. They all were missing. They all came back and were crucified. Even Buddha, there's a version of Buddha that does it as well. They all were resurrected. And these are all Egyptian mysteries that were practiced eons and eons ago. And so I just know that we're just hanging on. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I don't disrespect people who feel that they're just hanging on. I understand it. I really do. But it's just time that we've said, and every time, and by the way, it happens to me ever so often, I say, oh my God, what am I going to do? Then I think about it and I say, here's what you're going to do. You're going to think of a strategy. You're going to think of what you can do to help yourself. Because remember, you are, if there's such a thing as a God, you're it. You have all of the creative abilities up here in your brain. Okay? So go to work. Get to work.
To answer the question about defining God, I think nearly every religion that I'm aware of, except for a few isolated individuals that call themselves deists, give some sort of properties to God. The typical Christian one was mentioned earlier, but it was always described to me as omnipresent, omnibenevolent, and omniscient, and omnipotent. Those four things. There's other variations on other gods, Greek tradition, Hindu, and so on and so forth. I have never, when I say God, and I say God does not exist, I would allow for the minutest possibility that a deistic God could have existed and walked away. But I think that there are plenty of scientific explanations that we are now just, I'm talking recent science. I'm not talking 50 years ago when we would say, well, we don't know how the Big Bang happened. We know a lot more about it today than we knew 50 years ago. And I think that God, you can apply Occam's razor to God very clearly, even to a deistic God. So when I say I don't believe in God, I'm talking in a very open-ended God that has ever been defined by humanity. I have never heard a definition for God that I could accept.
We have, Russell, you had one question. You have a question, and then we're going to break for refreshments. Unless you have something to say, Ed. But let's go with your question here right now.
Okay. First, I would like to make a comment that a lot of people don't think about is all children are born atheists. Yeah. They have no belief in any God or any religious system until they start to become indoctrinated by their parents. And then my question that I actually do have is for ZSun-nee. ZSun-nee, are you not actually an atheist, not an agnostic?
You know, you might be right. But no, I'll tell you why. Because I do think there's some things that I am not as committed to and that I might, be willing to understand. As I said, I'm clairvoyant and clairaudient. So there are things that I see. For instance, I was in a church with my children years ago. They were so good to my children that I thought, well, I'm going to visit. But I told the pastor, please do not expect me to join. Okay, I'm here because you're good to my children. All right. But one Sunday I was sitting there in this, I don't know what you call it, I guess a Baptist-style church. And the choir was coming in with tambourines, and this was in Montgomery County. Okay. Now, if anybody should not be in a church where they're coming down the aisle with tambourines, it would be me. So I sat there, and I looked around, and I wanted to cry. I wanted to say, what in the world? How is this allowed to happen to me? And all of it, see, there that goes. Why me? Okay. So all of a sudden, have you ever heard cellophane or saran wrap perhaps crinkling in your ear? Okay. All of a sudden, this envelope was created around me, and all about it was this crinkling. All of a sudden, I'm in an envelope of quiet. And I hear, clairaudient, remember, a voice says, what do you think they are doing? And I said, well, I think at least they know that there's something beyond themselves that they should be respecting. Okay. The next thing that was said was, where do you think you are? I said, in outer Mongolia. And the voice said, well then, that's where you are. And I've thought about that a long time, and then the crinkling started, and all of a sudden the sounds of the choir and the tambourines and everything else came crashing into my ear, and all of a sudden the envelope was gone. Now, I thought about that, and I realized that, again, we are exactly what we see. There was an explanation that I wouldn't accept, but was right in front of me, which was, as you see, so it is. That's why I say the Bible has plenty of very good phrases. You put them up and remember these things, So as you think it, so it is. That's where I thought I was, and that's the hell I was creating for myself. What did I really need to do? Probably get out of there, which I did. If I could tell you how that happened, you would just throw your hands up.
I'm still not sure that answered the question.
Okay, I'm
whether
sorry.
you actually do believe in a God.
I would say at this point, no. I want to say I'm a little non-committal about it, but to tell you the truth, I don't see it as having the same kind of relevance that I even did a few years ago, because I've seen too many things happen, the tsunamis, the tragedies of this planet, and I've seen people who were so devoted. It's not enough to say that, tragedy happens to you because you haven't made up your mind what you want to do. I've seen people who are totally devoted, even in the face of tragedy, they fall down on their knees. And you know what? They get more tragedy. Look at the people in Indonesia. They just had an 8.6. I mean, it doesn't matter. There's no payoff that you can say, oh, okay, if I believe this way, if I'm faithful, if I'm loyal, none of these things, bad things will happen to me. I'm going to be, I'm going to be shown, or everyone's going to see, No, afraid not. I think you just, whether you can do nothing or do something. And the same waves, the cycles of life will continue, up and down, anyhow. But if you want to feel good, because I really believe we're made that way, I believe we're made to have some kind of a thing in us. I don't know what that is, I don't know what that means, but there's something in our system that says when your heart is open, when you feel loving, you feel better. So if loving God is something that you put in your heart, then you'll feel good. It doesn't mean anything bad or good will happen to you one day.
ZSun-nee, thank you. One final question in the back in yellow.
My two brief comments. First is I disagree with the Lutheran bishop. There's over 5,000 copies of the early Greek New Testament. Also, I was privileged to be in the same room with Mother Teresa smaller than this in '83, and I think she belongs in the catalog of saints. But speaking of Brian, my understanding is you're essentially an agnostic who's made the choice to be an atheist. And if I'm understanding that correctly, that seems to be a rejection of determinism and what would conventionally be termed free will. And if so, I'd kind of like to know, today I had my friend call me 15 times to beg me for money to buy booze. He's fallen off the wagon again. His will seems to me to be completely corrupted. Whether you believe in the corruption of free will, and actually how do you know that your choice is not corrupt will?
Are you expecting a response here?
Do we have the question once again is you've made a choice.
We have 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
How do I know my choice is not corrupted will?
Well, you believe in, in other words, you essentially believe in choice and free will, not determinism, which it sounds like you do. And how do you believe in the corruption of will or of
this is actually a long topic, and I think you've made a lot of assumptions in your question. But let me start with, I actually believe that the universe is run by mechanistic determinism. So your assumption that I believe in free will is flawed.
Can you clarify the choice then? You said you were agnostic and chose.
I didn't say that I chose to be an atheist.
I'm sorry, I put words in your mouth.
You have put words in my mouth.
I apologize.
I received enough information that my brain has come to the point where it can no longer accept the premise of a God as a viable explanation for the existence of the universe. Does that better explain my position?
Okay, yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
I tell you what, Pastor Ed has something to say. I want to close with a music physical benediction, as it were. But Pastor Ed has something to say. After that, feel free to help yourself to refreshments. Talk one-on-one with any of our panelists, or each other for that matter. Pastor Ed?
This has been really interesting. This is the best group we've had in several years. So, the largest group certainly, and there's been a lot of energy expressed here. There are a lot of questions, and this whole question of about God and about religion, our minds and hearts have really been stretched. So I thank our panelists and for all of you coming tonight. It would be very helpful for our interfaith group for you to put comments about how you think the evening went. I'm passing these around. If you'd like to be on the email list to get future events, we'd be glad to include you on that. We want also just one word. Our next meeting is going to be a month from now, the second Wednesday on May 9th. And Bill Gregg, who's here with us tonight, a Baha'i member, our local coin collector, is going to be dealing with the issue, does America have a spiritual destiny? And so we're excited about that and hope that you'll be able to come and join us and be a part of that. So thank you for coming tonight, and blessings to all of you.